We should be about seeing people give their life to Christ, being born again, as the Bible talks about, and beginning a new life and a new journey with Jesus Christ. Here at Beech Street, we operate off 3 values. We call them the B values: believe, belong, become. And the value of believe is first for a reason, because it's most important. We believe that a relationship with Jesus Christ is the most important issue in life. There is nothing that's more important. I mean, trust me, the one thing that's going to determine your eternity is your relationship with Jesus Christ. So we believe that here at Beech Street. That's why believe is our first of our B values. The church ought to be an obstetrician. We ought to be about bringing people in to the kingdom of God. But then also in the church, we should be a pediatrician. You know, once these people come into the church, we just don't drop them as babies. No, we take care of them. We care for God's children as they grow, as they nurture, as they mature, as they're learning these basic spiritual truths and apply them to their daily lives. The church should be a pediatrician. And then finally, the church should be a primary care physician. I mean, once these children grow up into young adults and adults, we maintain and we check on them. We make sure that their health is strong. We make sure that they're growing, make sure that they're serving, make sure that they're acting like they're supposed to act. If accidents happen, we treat those wounds. We patch them up and move them on in life. Once again, that's what we're supposed to be about as Christians, and that's especially what we're supposed to be about as a church. From Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 through 2, I want to share with you 3 pieces of advice that the Bible gives us about how we are to treat the wounded. You know, I said earlier, all too often in the church and in Christian circles, we have been really good at kicking the folks who are down. Maybe some of you, I don't know, maybe you're here because someone invited you or someone brought you. Maybe you're watching online and you have nothing to do with the church because they hurt you at some point when you were wounded. I want you to know, the Bible gives us some great advice to follow. Instead of shooting the wounded, we ought to be showing them something much, much different. Here's 3 actions to show them. Number 1, if you're taking notes, write this down. We are to restore them gladly. The wounded who are around us, they need to be restored gladly. If you look at verse number 1 there in Galatians chapter 6, you'll notice a word with me. The version of the Bible that I preach out of every week is the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. And the CSB uses the word someone. It says, brothers and sisters, if someone is overtaken. The word someone's used. The King James Version says, a man. That's the word that it uses in its translation. A man can be overtaken in a fault. Really, if you go back all the way to the original language of the New Testament, it's the Greek word anthropos. And that may be translated man, but you understand it's not gender specific. It's generic. So it's not just saying, well, a man can be overtaken. That doesn't mean, ladies, that you get a hall pass, okay? It means any person who is alive can receive that. That's really why I like the New American Standard Translation that says anyone can get caught. Anyone can fall and find themselves wounded. Anyone can be overtaken. I want you to understand this morning, we are all vulnerable and susceptible to being wounded. Lest you sit there and say, well, not me, brother, sister, you're anyone. And any one of us is susceptible to find ourselves wounded. And the idea that is expressed in this word, it says, if someone or anyone is overtaken, that's the word that is used in my translation. Some of your Bibles may use the word caught. Anyone who's caught. Is the idea that's not of a person who is, doesn't care about God and is sinning in their life and loves every second of it, Maybe you know someone like that who is far from God and they seem to be loving every second of it, living it up big time. But this is of a person who is trying to go the way they're supposed to go, and yet they are caught up in a web. How many of you walked out on the porch in the morning or walked out the door and you walked into a spider web? You know what it's like? I hate those things. You walk into that, you can't see it, but you sure feel it. I mean, you walk into it and you got that thing hanging all over you. You feel it. You're out there scraping off. Someone drives by and they think you're crazy. You're a lunatic, and you're out there trying to get that spider web off of you. I think sometimes people who are seeking to be the best person that they can be and just going through life normally walk into a spider web. They get caught in a sin trap. They want out, but they can't. And that can be a believer or an unbeliever alike. Through the years, I've seen many Christians. I've seen many ministers. I've seen many pastors. Some I know, some I don't know, who have gotten caught in the web and find themselves wounded. They've lost their ministry. They've lost their testimony. Unless you think I'm just picking on preachers, I've seen it happen in the pulpit and the pews. I thought about King David in the Old Testament. You remember King David? I mean, King David was a great leader. He was a great man. God said that he was a man after my own heart. But in 2 Samuel chapter 11, you remember David went out for a stroll on the rooftop. You could make the case that he really shouldn't even have been there. His men were in battle. David likely should have been in battle with them, leading them in battle, but he wasn't where he was supposed to be. He was out on that rooftop walking around, and you'll remember it was there on the rooftop. He gazed across the way, and he saw a beautiful woman taking a bath. And David began to lust, so much so that he eventually went and had an affair, a sexual affair, adultery with that woman. She got pregnant. And David, because he was the king, he could arrange whatever he wanted to. David arranged for that woman's husband to find himself on the front line, and he was killed in battle. But he was killed because David put him there. On that rooftop, David walked into a spider web of sin. I don't think David woke up that morning and said, you know what? I think I'm going to commit adultery and get a woman pregnant and kill her husband. I think I'm going to do that today. I don't meet very many people that say, you know what, today I think I'm just going to have an affair on my wife. But sometimes people, any of us, can find ourselves in the web of sin and find ourselves wounded. So when that happens, what are we to do? When that happens to people around us, how are we supposed to treat them? Are we supposed to just act like nothing's wrong? I mean, we're good at that sometimes. We act like nothing's wrong. When someone around us is wounded and they come to church, are we supposed to nail them to the wall? Is that what we're supposed to do? And we're supposed to make them feel guilty. We're going to let them know how sorry they are, How are we supposed to treat them? Well, the freedom that Jesus brings means that we're to treat them differently. They need to be restored. And you'll notice that word is used there in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. We are to restore them. The word restore is a really interesting word. It means to put something in its proper position. It is the word that is used to refer to surgery and the setting of a broken bone. That's what the word means. The setting of a broken bone, putting something back in its proper position. Think about this with me. When a person breaks a bone, whether it's through an accident or some bad decision in their life, like jumping out of an airplane. Thankfully, our guys came back and had all their bones working. But when someone breaks a bone, whether it's an accident or whether it's a bad decision of their own or because someone else pushed them down, they didn't have anything to do with it. What do they need? When someone has a broken bone, what do they need? When this person showed up at the ER and this was their x-ray, what does this person need? I mean, they don't need someone to gloat and celebrate over their broken bone. Man, that's a beautiful broken bone. Golly, that's all. Man, as breaks go, that's awesome. Congratulations. Is that what they need? Do they need someone to pull out their cell phone and take a picture and post it on Facebook? Boy, you ought to see this broken bone. And begin to post it and talk about it, and well, I wonder what they did to get this broken bone. Is that what they need? Do they need someone to sit them down and say, well, if you wouldn't have been jumping out of airplanes, you wouldn't have had a broken bone. Do they need someone to sit down and lecture them and preach at them? Is that what they need? I am a very loyal Dallas Cowboys fan. I oftentimes live my life being a very sad and dejected Dallas Cowboys fan. But, hope springs eternal this time of the year. The draft just happened. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. The Cowboys are my hometown team. I've been a Dallas Cowboys fan my whole life. And being a Dallas Cowboys fan means that there are some other teams in the NFL that I don't like, okay? One of those teams that I do not like is the team that is based in our nation's capital. This past year, we were told that their name was offensive, and they changed their name to something real creative and original, the Washington Football Team. But forever, I will know them as the Washington Redskins. I affectionately call them the Washington Deadskins in my house. I don't like the Redskins, I don't. And a former player of theirs, to me, embodied what I did not like about the Redskins. They had a quarterback, number 7, Joe Theismann. He was from Notre Dame in college. He came to the Redskins, and he was their quarterback for 12 years. He was in a couple Super Bowls, back-to-back, actually. They won one, they lost one, Pro Bowls. Joe Theismann was a great quarterback. But I tell you, every time I saw Joe Theismann, that single-bar face mask drove me crazy, I just wanted to reach through the TV and just grab it and shake it, what kind of quarterback wears a single-bar face mask? Well, I'll tell you which one. Only one for the Deadskins would do that, right? Well, Joe Theismann, on a Monday night, November 18th, 1985, this is back in the day, of course, for our students, there was a time where football was only on Sundays and Monday night. There was only one game on Monday night. Everybody watched Monday Night Football. Even people that weren't football fans watched Monday Night Football. I was 15 years old. I remember sitting in the living room. I remember watching this game. It was two teams that I dislike. Being a Dallas Cowboy fan, I didn't like Washington, and I did not like the New York Giants. Or I affectionately call them the New York Aints. The Aints, these guys, I didn't like either one of these teams, so I was kind of rooting for both of them to lose. That's kind of what I was doing. And the score was 7-7. It was in the second quarter. The Redskins tried a trick play. They tried a flea flicker. Theismann handed the ball off to John Riggins. He started to run. He turned around. He flicked the ball back to Joe Theismann, and Joe Theismann was going to throw a pass. But it did not fool the Giants' defense, and one of their linebackers, number 56 there, Lawrence Taylor, he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, came around and he smacked Joe Theismann, and as he tackled him, as he was going to the ground, Theismann's right leg was kind of caught in a weird position, and as he was tackling him, both bones in Theismann's lower right leg snapped. His tibia and his fibula, both of them, broken. Right there on national TV, it was a compound fracture. Now, do you know what a compound fracture is? A compound fracture means that the bone sticks through the skin. So here's Joe Theismann with his pretty little Redskin football socks on, and he goes back. I'm watching this, and I think to myself, I don't think his leg is supposed to go that way. That's not. And I see this happen, and you see something stick out of his sock, and you're like, whoa. And this is kind of before they had discretion on football coverage. I think the guys in the truck said, oh, that's cool. Let's show it again. And they showed it over and over. They kept going more slow-mo, more slow-mo. It was a gruesome injury. It was voted the most shocking moment in NFL history. One newspaper called it the hit that no one who saw can ever forget. And I'm going to tell you, being a very loyal Dallas Cowboys fan, I'm not proud to admit this, but you know what my reaction was when he got hurt? I was like, yes, Joe Theismann, that sucker's hurt. And the Cowboys don't have to face him. That's great. I was excited that Joe Theismann was injured until I saw the slow-mo replays, and I realized how bad the injury was, and I felt bad for cheering, Joe Theismann, the injuries he sustained in that game cost him his career. He never played football again. It was a career-ending injury. When Joe Theismann got tackled, what's the one thing he needed? He didn't need anything else but one thing. He needed that bone to be set back and put back in its proper position so that it could heal properly. so that Joe Theismann could be restored. And listen, any person, a believer, a non-believer, a Christian or not, in the moment that they're wounded, they need to be restored and put back in their proper position. And I just want to say this to you: if you do not have a relationship with Jesus, then you're out of position. And the thing you've got to do for wounds yourself or for the wounds of another person is to bring them back to Jesus and put them in the proper position. And we set that break with a glad spirit. Too often, we come in guns blazing and shooting and judging, and instead of being a person who is showing them Jesus, we're something else. So we've got to restore them gladly. Here's the second thing. We've got to reclaim them gently. I love the Bible because it not only tells us what to do, but it tells us how to do it. And here it says we're supposed to restore them, tells us to do that. But then it tells us how we restore them. Notice it says, with a gentle spirit. With a gentle spirit. I've only broken one bone in my body. I just turned 51 years old, and if I had some wood to knock on, I would knock on it, because in 51 years I've only broken one bone in my body. Funny story, I was playing intramural football at Ouachita. I was kind of a legend in my own mind. I wanted to be a defensive back, and I was playing defensive back, and we were out on the intramural field, and we're playing, and this quarterback threw a pass, and I jumped up and tried to intercept it, and in the process, the football just jammed one of my fingers. At least that's what I thought happens. You've had a finger jam. Man, it hurt like crazy. And all of a sudden that night, my finger was like a lot bigger than it was supposed to be. A little bit longer. My finger was turning colors that it was not supposed to be. And it was hurting. Man, my finger hurt so bad. And it finally took me to the campus doctor. I went to the campus doctor there on campus, and he said, after touching it and after me moaning, and he decided, let's take an x-ray. So they took an x-ray, and sure enough, I'd broken a bone in my finger. And the doctor gave me the news. He said, well, here's the bad news. There's really nothing we can do for a broken finger. We can't put it in a cast. It's not like a broken arm or a broken leg. So we're going to put you in one of these splints, kind of like that. You know what I'm talking about? And we're going to put you in that. We want you to tape it up every single day. We want you to wear that for a few weeks. So they put this splint on my finger. Did I fail to mention which finger it was? It was the middle finger on my left hand. Middle finger on my left hand. Are y'all following me here? Okay. This was in the fall of the year. It was almost time for me to go on Thanksgiving break. So I was in Arkadelphia. I got in my car and I drove down the freeway right through the city of Texarkana, going home, going to Fort Worth. The car that I drove was a Chevy Cavalier. It was a 5-speed. So I'm driving. My right hand is on the gear shift all the time. My left hand is on the steering wheel. Are you following me? Remember the finger that I broke? So I have my broken middle finger of my left hand in that splint, and I'm driving home to Fort Worth, and all down I-30, I kept getting flipped off by people. Other drivers would just drive by me and go. I was like, what did I do? I'm not driving crazy. So, lesson learned, My finger break was really not a big deal. It was just, it healed up fine. It doesn't bother me now. It really wasn't a big deal. But can you imagine if somebody has a really serious break, they don't need someone to be rough with it, when the doctor walked in the room, his hand didn't even touch my finger. His hand got close to my finger, and I'm going, oh. He's like, I haven't touched you yet, And the reality is when he did, I didn't need him to go, well, let's see if we can get this thing back. Yeah, I've done this before. I didn't need him to be rough and gruff. But what I needed was for him to be gentle. I needed a tender touch. And that's the word that's used here in Galatians 6:1. It says that we're to be gentle. The word that's used here is used in an earlier spot in the book of Galatians. You probably remember this in Galatians chapter 5. In fact, if you have your Bible open, you can look just up in the verses above where we are in 6:1 and 2. Galatians 5:22 and 23, there is the fruit of the Spirit that's talked about. There's these qualities, these traits that we as a Christians are to exhibit these things and show these things and cultivate them in our life. There's 9 fruits of the Spirit. You remember them? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Those 9 things. The 8th on that list is gentleness. Another word the Bible uses is the word meek. You remember Jesus said that in the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. He said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The word meek means gentle. And before I tell you what gentleness is, let me tell you real quickly what gentleness is not. The world tends to think that gentleness is for wusses. Gentleness, being soft, is not what's needed today. The world sees meekness as weakness. But that is not how the Bible sees this word gentle. And I want you to understand the word gentle that's used means strength under control. Say the word strength. Strength. You got to think about strength when you think of the word gentle. Strength under control. The word that is used is interesting, has an interesting word picture. It refers to a trainer who breaks or trains a wild horse. So you've got a horse that is wild as all get out, and the trainer, that process that the trainer takes that horse through is gentleness. The word also in the Bible speaks of a soothing medicine. It describes a gentle, soft breeze. It is strength under control. Let me tell you maybe how you can connect with that. If you have an unbroken or wild horse, it is useless and dangerous. If you have a medicine, instead of it being soothing, if you take too much of it, it'll kill you. Instead of a gentle breeze, if a gentle breeze is out of control, it can turn into a fierce wind that can knock trees and tear houses up, as we've seen here in Texarkana. Gentleness is a soft touch with a strong hand. And that's what is called for when we're dealing with the hurted and wounded people. They don't need just a strong person to come up and tell them how sorry they are and kick them while they're down. They need a strong yet soft person to show them gentleness. And part of that is an awareness that anyone can fall. We are to pull someone out of the pit. We need to ensure that we have enough strength to not just pull them out, but make sure we're not pulled in the pit. Because it says, if you'll notice in Galatians 6:1, it tells us there, watch out for yourselves so that you won't be tempted. The wounds that are impacting one person don't want to impact the other one with those new wounds. It is a whole lot easier. I've said this through the years. It's a lot easier for you to pull someone up, pull someone down than it is to pull someone up. Be careful with your friendships and be careful with the people that you surround, because it is a whole lot easier for them to pull you down than for them to pull you, for you to pull them up, because that's what you're intended to do. A great word that I read this week, and this makes so much sense. We all have a tendency to see the best in ourselves and the worst in someone else, right? We don't like to admit that, but we typically do have a tendency to see the best in us and the worst in someone else. So before you get too caught up in that little stick in somebody else's eye, don't forget about the two before in your own, okay? Is what Jesus says. Jesus says that we've got to make sure that we are reclaiming them with gentleness. Here's the last thing. Rebuild them graciously. Verse 2 says that we're to carry one another's burdens. And that tells me two things. When I read that passage, carry someone else's burdens, what that says is that tells me, number one, we all got burdens. We've all got burdens. And number two, we're not intended to carry those burdens alone. You first need to know this. Take any burden you've got to Jesus. In a relationship with Jesus, it has a lot of blessings and a lot of freedom from all kinds of things. But I'm telling you, whatever kind of burden, whatever kind of wound you've got, if you will just take it to Jesus, He will meet it and He will begin to do a work in your life. Psalm 55:22, look what it says. Cast your burden on the Lord and He will sustain you. 1 Peter 5:7, I love this verse. Cast all your cares on Him because He cares for you. I'm telling you, if you're wounded, whether it's your own doing or someone else's, man, take that to Jesus and give it to Him. And He will take them and He will do something incredible with them. And I would say this to those of us who see those with those burdens, don't let them carry those alone. If you will pick up those burdens and take them with them, you know, a lot of times one problem for us is we're so selfish and we're so absorbed with our stuff. If you will begin to carry somebody else's stuff, you won't be focused on your stuff. I'm not saying sweep it under the rug or ignore it, but for many of us, we could do better by focusing on someone else's burdens instead of just sitting there staring at ours all the time. And when we do that with grace and forgiveness, that's the process that's used to build someone back. Y'all know the real tragedy of Humpty Dumpty, right? You remember Humpty Dumpty? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men, can you finish it with me? Couldn't put Humpty back together again. I mean, it's a real tragedy, isn't it? I mean, Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall, busts into all kinds of pieces. I mean, his yoke is leaking out. It's an ugly scene. And you would think that the king's men, the king's might, could put him back together again, but the real tragedy is nobody could put Humpty back together again. Humpty Dumpty did not have something that you have that's available to you today, and that is the mercy and the grace of Jesus Christ. God can put whatever is broken back together again. And I want you to hear me. I believe this as sure as I'm standing here. I don't care how badly you're broken, Jesus can put you back together again. And I don't say that to minimize your wound. I'm not saying that to minimize what you are dealing with, but I'm saying that to maximize the power of God. God can put you back together again. There are wounded people all around you. The question is, are you too busy, are you too consumed with yourself to see them and to notice them? All too often they have been shunned or shot at, even in Christian circles. But we as Christians and the church today needs to show the wounded some important qualities. There was a woman who went to the doctor with her husband. Her husband had been not feeling good and kind of had some symptoms and thought it was time to go to the doctor. She said, I'll take off and go with you. So they went to the doctor. They got in the exam room. The doctor checked him out. And after looking at him, the doctor said to the wife, can I speak to you a few moments out in the hallway? So she stepped out in the hall with the doctor. And the doctor, away from the husband, said to the wife, your husband's really sick. I mean, he's in pretty bad shape. He's got some stuff wrong with him. And I tell you, I'm going to give you some orders. You need to do these things, or your husband's not going to be with you very long. He said to her, the first thing I want you to do every morning, you need to fix him a healthy, hot breakfast. You need to send him off with a full belly and in a good mood. You need to take care of him in the morning and be real sweet to him. And then when it comes lunchtime, you need to fix him lunch. Warm, nutritious meal, not no Hot Pockets or bologna sandwiches. I'm talking, you need to make him a meal, and take care of him so that when he goes back to work, he's got energy to finish the rest of the day. And then when he gets home for dinner, you need to make him a home-cooked meal, no TV dinners or anything like that. Home-cooked meal. And after the meal's over, don't expect him to do any household chores. He don't need to be doing the dishes or anything. Just let him go sit in his recliner and let him rest and let him watch TV. Just spoil him. Every second of the day is what the doctor said. They came back in the room. The husband put his clothes back on. They left, and they were on their way home. And the husband said to his wife, I'm really curious. What did you and that doctor talk about out there in the hall for so long? She said, I tell you what, the doctor told me you're going to die. People who are wounded don't need to come to church or come in the circle of us as a Christian and have somebody say to them, you're going to die. Man, you screwed up. They don't need someone to tell them that. They know that already, okay? They already got that. What they need is someone to show them with gladness and gentleness and grace, someone to show them how they can be healed and move on past their wounds instead of their wounds just being all that defines them. May we be that person. May I be that person. May you be that person who's showing those things and not shooting the wounded because they're all around us. Make sure that you're doing that. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think about this morning, because you're really one of two people here this morning. Either you're here today and maybe you are wounded. And I don't want to gloss past that. I want to say to you, have you brought your wounds to Jesus? I'm not looking for a term paper on what happened, or whether it was your fault or whether it was somebody else's fault. All I know is you're hurting today. And have you brought that hurt to Jesus Christ? If you haven't, I beg you, I implore you, bring it to Jesus. Jesus can put you back together. He can. He can begin that process, put you back together. If you never have started a relationship with Jesus, you can start that today, and that will be a game changer, a life changer for you. The other group of us that's here is, you know people that are wounded. Some of them you know really well. Maybe others of you have them in your circle, but you don't really know them well. But the fact is, they're there. And now, you hadn't really given much thought, but after this message, you've heard it, you're accountable now. How will you treat them? What will you show them? What will you do with them? They don't need someone to tell them, man, your arm's broken. Golly, that's a bad break. They need someone to restore them, to point them to the place where they can have things put in the proper position. They need someone to do that gently. They need someone who will rebuild them. Will you be that person? If you've got a person that you're thinking of on your mind who's wounded, why don't you pray for them and ask God to give you an opportunity to be a part of their healing. Here in just a second, I'm going to be here at the front. We're going to sing. And if you would like for someone to pray with you, I'd be honored to partner with you in prayer. Obviously, the altar's open. You can pray here by yourself, or you can talk to me about how you can become a Christian. Daniel's going to be up here with me. You can talk to Daniel about how you can become a Christian, maybe about joining the church. You have some questions about that, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. But Lord, just do your work in us. We're so thankful for that work and for the power that's in your name. And we ask and pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand together. Let's sing for just a few minutes. Hey, we're here for you. We're not going to stay long, but we're here for you. We're going to sing for just a couple moments.
All throughout my history, your faithfulness has walked beside me. The winter storms have made a way for spring. See the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you, oh Jesus. See the cross, the empty grave, the evidence is endless. All my sin rolled away because of you. fulfillment all over my life, all over my life.
Hey, I appreciate you being here this morning. And the bottom line is when you walk out of here, really the sermon's just started.